It was just another typical day, or so I thought. I was out of town, visiting a client in Phoenix. The meeting had gone well, and I was wrapping up some paperwork in the quiet of the conference room when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with Vanessa's name. I didn't think much of it, just the usual check-in, I assumed. Maybe she was wondering how long I'd be or if I'd remembered to pick up something on my way back. I stepped out into the hallway, answering with a casual, "Hey, what's up?" That's when her voice hit me, cold, almost smug. There was no preamble, no pleasantries. Just, "Lucas, I'm divorcing you." "Oh, and I've already sold our apartment. Jordan and I are moving in together. Good luck finding a new place." She ended it with a laugh, as if it were the punchline to some cruel joke. For a moment, the world tilted. It was like hearing someone talk about your life as though you weren't in the room. Divorce? Jordan? Sold the apartment? Her words came fast and sharp, each one more jarring than the last. But in that split second, I knew one thing. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me crack. I forced my voice to stay calm, my tone as neutral as I could make it. "Sounds good," I replied, as if she'd just told me she'd switched brands of coffee. Her silence on the other end was brief, but I knew it was there. She'd expected outrage, maybe even a pleading response. Instead, I gave her indifference. Inside, though, it wasn't indifference. Inside was a storm, a mixture of anger, hurt, and disbelief. 6 years of marriage, and this was how it ended? Over a phone call? Her voice, filled with casual entitlement, kept playing in my mind. "Jordan and I are moving in together." Jordan, the boyfriend I didn't know existed until 5 seconds ago. She'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and now she had the audacity to laugh about it? But what hit me the hardest was the apartment. Our apartment. It wasn't just walls and furniture. It was everything we'd worked for together. Every inch of that place held memories of late-night talks, arguments, laughter, and dreams. And now she'd sold it, just like that, without even telling me. I took a deep breath, my hand tightening around the phone. She wasn't done yet. "You probably think you're going to fight this, Lucas," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "But it's done. The paperwork's signed, and Jordan and I are moving on. Maybe you should too." "Got it," I said simply, still refusing to give her what she wanted. I hung up before she could say anything else. Standing there in the hallway, the weight of what had just happened began to settle. My wife had not only decided to leave me, but she'd also orchestrated it with such calculation that I almost had to admire the nerve. Almost. But admiration was far from what I felt. What I did feel, though, was resolve. She thought she'd outsmarted me, thought she held all the cards. But Vanessa didn't know everything. She didn't know about the quiet move I'd made months ago when we refinanced the apartment. She didn't know the deed was solely in my name. And that was her first mistake. I returned to the conference room, sat back down, and stared blankly at the paperwork in front of me. My mind wasn't on the client anymore. It was back home, in that apartment I now knew she and Jordan were planning to claim as their love nest. The betrayal stung, but beneath it, something else was brewing: determination. I wouldn't let her take everything from me. I wouldn't let her laugh her way into a new life while I scrambled to piece mine back together. No, Vanessa didn't realize it yet, but she just handed me the upper hand. As the rest of the meeting dragged on, I kept a poker face, nodding at the right moments and offering polite responses. But my mind was elsewhere, plotting, preparing. By the time I left the building, I wasn't the same man who had answered that phone call. I was ready to fight. Ready to show Vanessa and Jordan exactly what happens when you underestimate someone who's been paying attention all along. The flight home couldn't come soon enough. The plane ride home was uneventful, but my mind was anything but calm. Vanessa's words kept replaying in my head, each syllable a hammer against the walls of our history. The betrayal was bad enough, but the sheer arrogance of her move? Selling the apartment, the one thing that had been our shared dream, our first major milestone as a couple, without a second thought? It was like she'd erased me from her life with the stroke of a pen. But here's the thing about Vanessa. She never read the fine print. She was always the type to skim through agreements, signing her name with that same air of confidence she wore like a badge. She left the details to me, trusting that I'd figure it all out. Funny. isn't it? The very habit that had frustrated me for years was now my saving grace. Months ago, when we refinanced the apartment for a lower interest rate, I made a decision. A quiet, calculated move. At the time, it seemed practical. With the new terms, it made sense to transfer the deed into my name alone. I didn't even think twice about it. It was just one of those things you do to streamline the paperwork. Vanessa hadn't objected. In fact, she'd barely looked at the documents before signing them. I hadn't mentioned it since because, honestly, why would I? It wasn't a secret, just a detail that didn't come up. Until now, Vanessa's arrogance blinded her to the reality of the situation. She thought she could sell the apartment and walk away with the money, leaving me in the dust. But she didn't realize that the deed, the one legal document that decided ownership, had my name on it and mine alone. As I sat on that plane, staring at the clouds outside the window, I couldn't help but smile. She'd sold something that wasn't hers to sell. And while I was furious at her betrayal, there was a sense of satisfaction in knowing I held the upper hand. When I landed and turned my phone back on, I had no messages from Vanessa. No smug follow-ups, no taunts. She probably assumed I was too busy wallowing in self-pity to respond. Little did she know, I was gearing up for the fight of my life. My first call wasn't to her. It was to Chloe, my lawyer and an old college friend. I'd helped her move into her first apartment years ago, and she'd always joked that I'd get the family discount if I ever needed her services. Now, it seemed, it was time to cash in. "Lucas," Chloe said when she picked up. "What's going on? You don't usually call me during work hours." I explained everything, the phone call, the apartment, Jordan, and Vanessa's delusions of grandeur. By the time I finished, Chloe was silent for a moment, and then she laughed, a sharp, incredulous laugh. "She sold the apartment?" she repeated. "Lucas, does she even know she can't legally do that?" "Apparently not," I said, the faintest hint of amusement in my voice. "Well," Chloe said, her tone turning serious, "this is going to be interesting. First, we'll need to notify the buyer that the sale is void. If Vanessa's already taken their money, that could open up a whole new can of worms. Fraud charges, for starters." The word fraud sent a jolt of satisfaction through me. Vanessa thought she was so clever, pulling the rug out from under me. But in her rush to start her new life, she'd overlooked one critical detail. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. "For now, gather everything, emails, documents, anything related to the refinancing and the deed," Chloe said. "I'll handle the legal side. But Lucas, if she's already bragging about this to you, she's probably told other people too. She's digging her own grave, and we just need to give her a push." I hung up feeling lighter than I had in days. The betrayal still stung, but knowing that Vanessa's scheme was unraveling gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt since that phone call. When I got home that evening, I didn't waste time. I pulled out the deed, the refinancing paperwork, and every email exchange related to the apartment. Each piece of evidence felt like a small victory, a reminder that Vanessa's carelessness would be her undoing. I placed the documents in a neat stack on the dining table, then sat back and stared at them. This wasn't just about the apartment anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, about showing Vanessa that I wasn't the pushover she'd assumed I was. She thought she'd won. She thought she could walk away with everything, laughing at my expense. But Vanessa had underestimated me, and soon enough, she'd realized just how big of a mistake that was. The drive back to the apartment was surreal. I'd spent the entire flight planning out what I'd say, how I'd handle the confrontation. Vanessa had no idea what was coming, and that thought gave me a strange sense of calm. For once, the scales weren't tipped in her favor. The moment I walked through the door, I could feel it. The apartment was different. Her presence was heavy in the air, but not in the familiar way. No, this was different. It was like she'd claimed the space as her own, as if my existence within these walls was already erased. Her voice reached me before her face did. She was in the living room, chatting animatedly with someone. I turned the corner and stopped in my tracks. There she was, standing next to a man I could only assume was Jordan. He was younger than I expected, tall and smug, with the kind of confidence that comes from thinking you've won a prize. Vanessa spotted me first. Her smile faltered for just a second before she plastered it back on. "Oh, Lucas, you're back," she said, her tone dripping with false cheer. Jordan looked over, and I swear he smirked. He actually smirked, as if I were some minor inconvenience in his new life. "I didn't realize you'd be home so soon," Vanessa continued, her voice carefully neutral. "Jordan and I were just discussing some plans for the apartment." Plans? For my apartment? The audacity of it almost made me laugh. But I didn't. I just stepped further into the room, set my bag down, and looked at them both. "Vanessa," I said, my voice calm but firm, "we need to talk." Her smile wavered. "Lucas, can it wait? We're kind of in the middle of something." "No," I said, crossing my arms. "It can't." Jordan glanced at her, then back at me. "Look, man," he said, his tone patronizing. "I get that this is hard for you, but Vanessa and I—" "This doesn't concern you," I cut in, my eyes never leaving Vanessa's. The room went quiet. Vanessa's confident demeanor began to crack as I pulled out the deed from my bag. I held it up, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. "What's that?" she asked, her voice tight. "It's the deed to this apartment," I said, my tone steady. "The one that's in my name. Only my name." Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of panic. "What are you talking about?" she asked, though her voice lacked the usual confidence. "After we refinanced, I had the deed transferred to my name. You signed the paperwork without even reading it, remember?" I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "So no, Vanessa, you didn't sell this apartment. You can't sell something you don't own." Jordan's smirk vanished. He turned to her, confusion and irritation written all over his face. "Is this true?" he demanded. "Of course not," she snapped, though her voice wavered. She turned back to me, her eyes narrowing. "You're lying." I didn't bother arguing. I simply set the deed on the coffee table in front of them. Jordan picked it up, scanning the document. His expression darkened as he realized the truth. "Vanessa," he said slowly, "what is this?" She sputtered, her confidence unraveling. It's nothing. He's just trying to scare us." I let out a dry laugh. "Scare you?" "Vanessa, I'm just getting started. The sale you made? Void. The money you've taken? If you've spent a single cent of it, you're looking at fraud charges." Her face went pale. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I countered, stepping closer. "Go ahead. Call your buyer. See how they feel about being scammed." Jordan stepped back, holding up his hands. Whoa. Fraud? Scammed? I didn't sign up for this." He looked at Vanessa, his tone turning accusatory. "You said this place was yours, that you'd already sold it." "It is," she insisted, her voice growing desperate. "I mean, it was supposed to be." Jordan shook his head, taking another step back. "I'm not getting involved in this mess," he muttered. I crossed my arms, watching the cracks spread in their little fantasy. "So," I said, addressing them both, "here's how this is going to work. Vanessa, you're going to pack your things and leave. You too, Jordan. You have no right to be here, and I'm done playing nice." "You can't do this," Vanessa hissed, her voice trembling with anger. "This is our home." "No," I said firmly. "This is my home, and you're not welcome in it anymore." Jordan didn't need any more convincing. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door, throwing one last look at Vanessa. "Good luck," he said coldly before walking out. Vanessa turned to me, her eyes blazing. "You're going to regret this," she spat. I met her gaze, unflinching. "No, Vanessa. You're the one who's going to regret it." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. For the first time in days, the apartment felt like mine again. And it was just the beginning. Jordan's departure had been satisfying, but I knew the chaos wasn't over. Vanessa, as predictable as ever, wasn't someone who would simply slink away in silence. Still, I couldn't help but relish the look on Jordan's face when he'd finally pieced it all together. His smug confidence crumbling into confusion and irritation as he realized the tangled mess Vanessa had dragged him into. It wasn't just the fraud that had shaken him. It was the betrayal. He had believed her, trusted her when she said the apartment was hers to sell, that their new life together was built on solid ground. Watching him crumble under the weight of her lies was almost poetic. But let's rewind for a moment. When Jordan first showed up with Vanessa, he carried himself like he owned the place. His every glance and gesture radiated arrogance, like a man confident he'd won the jackpot. I'd seen men like him before, the ones who mistake audacity for power, who think they've outsmarted the world when, in reality, they're standing on quicksand. When I revealed the truth about the deed, his transformation was immediate. It started small, a flicker of doubt in his eyes as he scanned the document I'd placed on the coffee table. I watched him read it, his lips tightening with each line. By the time he looked up, the confidence was gone, replaced by something far more satisfying. Panic. "Vanessa," he had said, his voice low and strained. "What is this?" Vanessa, true to form, had tried to bluff her way out of it. "It's nothing, Jordan. He's just trying to mess with us. Don't fall for it." But Jordan wasn't buying it. Not anymore. He wasn't the sharpest guy, but even he could connect the dots. The legal jargon in the deed, my calm and unwavering demeanor, Vanessa's growing desperation. It all painted a picture he couldn't ignore. "You told me this place was yours," he said, his voice rising. "You said you'd already sold it. Was that a lie too?" Vanessa shot me a venomous glare, as if this were somehow my fault. "It wasn't a lie," she snapped at him, though her voice wavered. I didn't know about the deed being in his name, okay? It's a technicality." "A technicality?" Jordan scoffed, holding up the deed. "This says he owns the apartment outright. That's not a technicality, Vanessa. That's fraud." The word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Vanessa's face paled, her bravado crumbling. She turned to me, her eyes narrowing. "You planned this, didn't you? You knew I'd try to sell it, and you just sat there, waiting to humiliate me." I raised an eyebrow. "You gave me far too much credit. I didn't plan anything, Vanessa. You did this all on your own." Jordan's frustration boiled over. "You didn't tell me any of this, Vanessa. You said you had everything under control. Do you even realize what kind of position this puts me in? I can't be involved in something like this." "You're not involved," Vanessa snapped, her voice shrill. "This is between me and Lucas." "Really?" He shot back. "Because I'm standing in the middle of his apartment, holding a deed that says I have no business being here. Sounds pretty involved to me." I couldn't help but interject. "He's not wrong, Vanessa. Fraud charges don't look good on anyone's record. And if you've already taken money from the buyer, well, let's just say this situation isn't going to end the way you think it will." Jordan ran a hand through his hair, visibly grappling with the realization that his perfect new life was unraveling before it even began. "I'm out," he said abruptly, stepping away from Vanessa. Her eyes widened. "What do you mean, you're out?" "I mean I'm done," he said, his tone sharp. "This isn't what I signed up for. You lied to me, and now you're dragging me into your mess. Figure it out on your own." With that, he grabbed his coat and headed for the door. Vanessa scrambled after him, her voice pleading. "Jordan, wait. Don't go. We can fix this. Just give me a chance to." He didn't even look back. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving her standing there, stunned. For a moment, I thought she might actually cry. She turned back to me, her face a mixture of rage and despair. "Are you happy now?" she spat. "You've ruined everything." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I didn't ruin anything, Vanessa. You did that all on your own. You lied, you schemed, and now you're facing the consequences. Maybe it's time you start taking responsibility for your actions." Her anger flared, but she didn't have a response. She stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I could hear her throwing things around, muttering under her breath. As I stood there, the silence after Jordan's departure was almost peaceful. Watching him realize the truth and walk away was the cherry on top of an already satisfying confrontation. Vanessa had overplayed her hand, and now she was left to pick up the pieces, alone. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I was truly in control. The game wasn't over, but the tide had definitely turned in my favor. Vanessa's anger could have powered a small city that night. I could hear her pacing in the bedroom, tossing her things around and muttering curses under her breath. The sound of hangers clattering to the floor and the occasional thud of her suitcase hitting the bed didn't bother me. I just sat in the living room, enjoying the silence between her outbursts. I'd already won this round, and we both knew it. Jordan's dramatic exit had left her reeling, and for the first time since she'd made that smug phone call, Vanessa wasn't in control. It was my turn now, and she hated every second of it. She burst out of the bedroom after what felt like an hour, her face flushed and her expression twisted with frustration. "You think you've won, don't you?" she said, her voice sharp and accusatory. I leaned back on the couch, crossing my arms. "Won? Vanessa, this isn't a game. This is my life. You're the one who decided to turn it into a circus." She let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, please, don't act like some innocent victim here. You knew about the deed. You planned this. You've been waiting for a moment like this to rub it in my face." I shrugged, refusing to take the bait. "You didn't care about the details, Vanessa. You never have. I didn't need to plan anything because your arrogance did all the work for me. You signed the paperwork without even reading it. That's not on me, that's on you." Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, and for a moment, I thought she might actually scream. But instead, she took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. "Fine," she said, her tone dripping with venom. "You've made your point. Congratulations. What do you want, Lucas? Do you want me to beg? Is that it?" I raised an eyebrow. "Beg? No, Vanessa. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to leave. You and your grand plans for this apartment can find somewhere else to play house." Her face twisted with fury, but there was something else beneath it. Panic. Real panic. She had underestimated me, and now she was grasping at straws. "You can't just kick me out," she said, her voice trembling. "I have nowhere to go." "Then I suggest you start figuring it out," I replied, my tone calm but firm. "Because this is my home, and you're no longer welcome here." She stared at me, her lips trembling as she tried to come up with a response. Finally, she let out a frustrated growl and stormed back into the bedroom. Moments later, she emerged with a suitcase in tow. "You're going to regret this," she said, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. I stood, meeting her gaze with steady resolve. "No, Vanessa, you're the one who's going to regret this. You thought you could sell this apartment, take the money, and waltz off into the sunset with Jordan. Now look at you. No apartment, no money, and no boyfriend." She flinched at my words, but she didn't say anything. She just stood there, her hands tightening around the handle of her suitcase. "I'll give you a few days to figure out where you're going," I continued. "But make no mistake, you're leaving. And the sooner, the better." Her eyes burned with fury, but she didn't argue. She turned on her heel and dragged her suitcase out the door, slamming it behind her. The silence that followed was deafening, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe again. Vanessa's panic had been palpable, her desperation like a weight hanging in the air. But now, she was gone, and the apartment, my apartment, felt lighter without her. I knew this wasn't the end. Vanessa wasn't the type to give up so easily, and I fully expected her to try something else. But for now, I'd won, and that was enough. As I sat back on the couch, I allowed myself a small smile. She thought she could bulldoze her way through my life, but she hadn't counted on one thing: me. I wasn't the naive, trusting husband she thought I was. I was done being her pawn, and now, for the first time in a long time, I was finally free. The apartment was quiet, almost too quiet, after Vanessa left. Her absence was like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in weeks, the tension that had been hanging over me like a storm cloud began to lift. I stood in the living room, looking around at the remnants of a life we'd built together. It was strange, how something that once felt so permanent could now feel so foreign. But I wasn't one to dwell on the past. Vanessa had underestimated me, and I wasn't about to waste this opportunity to take full control of my life. This wasn't just about reclaiming my home. It was about reclaiming myself. The first thing I did was pack up her things. I didn't want her energy, her entitlement, or her lies lingering in my space any longer. I grabbed a few empty boxes from the closet and started sorting through her belongings. The process was oddly therapeutic. Each item I placed in the box felt like shedding a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. Her shoes, tossed carelessly by the door, boxed. Her collection of designer handbags, boxed. The framed photos she insisted on hanging in the hallway, even though I hated them, down they came. I didn't break or damage anything, not because I was feeling generous, but because I wanted to do this with dignity. Vanessa had brought enough chaos into my life. I didn't need to stoop to her level. Once I'd cleared her things, the apartment already felt different. The clutter, both physical and emotional, was gone. It was just me now, in a space that was finally my own. Next, I called Chloe. She'd been my rock through this entire ordeal, and I knew she'd have the next steps ready. "How's it going over there?" she asked, her tone both professional and sympathetic. "Quiet," I replied. "Vanessa's gone. For now, at least." "Good," Chloe said. "Let's keep it that way. I've already notified the buyer about the voided sale, and they're not happy with Vanessa. They're fully cooperating with us, which makes this much easier." "What about Vanessa?" I asked. "She's in a tight spot," Chloe said with a hint of satisfaction. "If she's already spent any of the deposit money, that's on her. And if she tries to push back, we'll move forward with fraud charges." The word fraud still sent a satisfying chill down my spine. Vanessa had always believed she was untouchable, that she could manipulate and bulldoze her way through any situation. Now, she was finally learning the hard way that actions have consequences. "Do we need to do anything else right now?" I asked. "For now, just hold your ground," Chloe said. "Make it clear that the apartment is yours and that you won't tolerate any more nonsense from her. I'll handle the legal side of things, and we'll move forward with the divorce paperwork soon." I thanked her and hung up, feeling more grounded than I had in weeks. Chloe was right. This was my home, and I wasn't going to let Vanessa or anyone else take that away from me. With that in mind, I started reclaiming the space. The oversized gaming chair Vanessa had hated, I dragged it out of the corner and placed it by the window, where I could sit and enjoy the view. The minimalist artwork I'd always loved but she dismissed as boring, back on the walls. I even rearranged the furniture, shifting everything to reflect my tastes rather than hers. It wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about making the apartment feel like mine again. By the time I was done, the space looked and felt entirely different. It was cleaner, brighter, more personal. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was my sanctuary, my starting point for the next chapter of my life. Later that evening, my best friend Ethan came over with a bottle of bourbon. He took one look around and let out a low whistle. "Wow," he said, sinking into the couch. "This place looks different." "It's mine now," I said simply, pouring us both a glass. Ethan raised his glass in a toast to taking control and kicking toxic people to the curb. I clinked my glass against his, a small smile playing at my lips. To fresh starts. As the night wore on, the weight of the past few weeks began to lift. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. Taking control of the apartment was only the beginning. I was ready to move forward, to build a life that was entirely my own. And as I sat there, surrounded by the warmth of good company and the quiet satisfaction of victory, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't just reclaiming a space. I was reclaiming myself. The days following Vanessa's departure were a whirlwind of closure and clarity. For all her threats and dramatics, I knew Vanessa wasn't going to let things end quietly. True to form, she tried everything to claw her way back into control. Calls, emails, and even a few surprise visits to the apartment. Each one was a desperate attempt to salvage a situation she had already lost. Her tone alternated between pleading and accusatory. One day, she'd leave voicemails begging for another chance. "Lucas, we can fix this. It doesn't have to end this way. You know I didn't mean for things to get so messy." The next, her messages were filled with venom. "You're being petty, Lucas. I hope you're happy ruining my life." I didn't respond. Not once. The days of entertaining her manipulations were over. Every call, every message was just another reminder of why I was better off without her. Jordan's fallout with her had only made things worse. Apparently, He'd completely distanced himself after realizing the full extent of her lies and the legal mess she'd created. She was on her own now, and the isolation was clearly driving her to desperation. Chloe, ever the professional, kept me updated on the legal proceedings. "She's panicking," Chloe said during one of our calls. "The buyer isn't pressing charges, but they're furious. Vanessa's burned bridges she can't rebuild. And the divorce? She's got no leverage, Lucas. You're walking away clean." Hearing those words was like a weight being lifted off my chest. For years, I'd felt trapped in a marriage where I was constantly second-guessed, dismissed, and taken for granted. Now, with every legal step finalized, I could feel the chains breaking. When the divorce papers arrived for her signature, Vanessa made one last-ditch effort to stall. She sent a long email filled with excuses and half-hearted apologies, trying to paint herself as the victim. She claimed she had acted out of fear and felt neglected in our marriage. It was almost laughable. But the best part? Chloe's airtight preparation meant that Vanessa couldn't stall for long. A few weeks later, she finally signed the papers. Just like that, it was over. The day the divorce was finalized felt like the end of a long, grueling marathon. I stood in the middle of the apartment, my apartment, and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The space felt lighter, freer, like it had been purged of all the negativity Vanessa had brought into it. That evening, Ethan came by again, this time with takeout and another bottle of bourbon. "So, it's official?" he asked, leaning back on the couch. "It's official," I said, pouring us each a glass. "To freedom," he said, raising his glass with a grin. "To freedom," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. The days that followed were filled with small victories. I continued reclaiming the apartment, turning it into a space that truly reflected who I was. The gaming setup Vanessa hated? Front and center in the living room. The artwork she called boring, proudly displayed on the walls. I even bought a new couch, one that felt like it belonged in my home, not ours. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't walking on eggshells, trying to appease someone who never appreciated me. I was living for myself, and it felt damn good. One evening, as I was sorting through some old paperwork, I came across a photo of Vanessa and me. It was from the early days of our marriage, back when things still felt hopeful. We were smiling, arms around each other, looking like a couple who had it all figured out. I stared at the photo for a long moment. There had been good times, sure, but they were buried under years of neglect, manipulation, and betrayal. That photo was a snapshot of a moment that no longer existed, a life that had ended long before that phone call. I slipped the photo into an envelope and tucked it away in a drawer. It wasn't something I wanted to see every day, but I wasn't ready to throw it away, either. It was a part of my past, but it didn't define me. The apartment had become more than just a place to live. It was a symbol of my resilience. I'd fought for it, stood my ground, and come out on top. It was a reminder that I was capable of reclaiming not just my space, but my life. In the weeks that followed, I started planning for the future. The divorce had closed one chapter, but it also opened the door to endless possibilities. I didn't know exactly what the next step would be, but I knew one thing for certain. It would be on my terms. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free from Vanessa, free from her lies, and free from the weight of a marriage that had been dragging me down. As I sat on my newly purchased couch that night, a glass of bourbon in hand and the city lights twinkling outside, I couldn't help but smile. This was my life now. Simple, peaceful, and entirely mine. The weeks following the divorce felt surreal, like waking up from a nightmare and realizing the sun was finally shining again. The legal battles were over, Vanessa was out of my life, and the apartment, my sanctuary, had become a symbol of everything I'd fought to reclaim. But what came next was the part one hadn't expected: peace. It was the kind of peace that came with knowing I'd survived something that could have broken me. I didn't just survive, though. I thrived. I rebuilt, one small step at a time, and each step brought me closer to a life that felt entirely my own. I started with the apartment. It wasn't just about redecorating. It was about turning the space into a reflection of who I was without Vanessa's influence. The oversized gaming chair I loved, but she loathed? It had a new home by the window, where I could sit and look out over the city while losing myself in a good game. The minimalist artwork she'd once dismissed as boring was back on the walls, and I even splurged on a new couch. A sleek, modern piece that fit perfectly with the new vibe of the place. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Each change I made felt like a step toward reclaiming my identity. The apartment was no longer a shared space filled with compromise and resentment. It was mine, a sanctuary that radiated warmth, freedom, and possibility. One evening, as I was reorganizing a closet, I came across a box of old photos. Among them was one of Vanessa and me, taken during the early days of our marriage. We were smiling, arms around each other, looking like a couple who had it all figured out. I stared at the photo for a long moment. It was strange, seeing a version of myself that felt so far removed from who I was now. Back then, I thought I knew what love looked like, what partnership meant, but hindsight has a way of stripping away illusions. I slipped the photo into an envelope and tucked it into the back of the closet. It wasn't something I wanted to look at often, but I wasn't ready to throw it away either. That part of my life, as painful as it had been, had shaped me. It wasn't about holding on to the past. It was about acknowledging it and letting it serve as a reminder of how far I'd come. With the apartment fully reclaimed, I turned my attention to the future. For years, I've been so wrapped up in trying to hold my marriage together that I'd put my own dreams on hold. Now, with nothing holding me back, the possibilities felt endless. I started setting goals, personal, professional, even recreational. I signed up for a cooking class, something I'd always wanted to do but never got around to. I reconnected with old friends, people I drifted away from during the years I spent walking on eggshells around Vanessa. Ethan, my best friend, was a constant presence through it all. One evening, we sat on the balcony with a bottle of bourbon, talking about everything and nothing. "You know," he said, raising his glass, "I've got to say, man, you're glowing these days. Single life suits you." I laughed, taking a sip of my drink. "It's not about being single," I said. "It's about being free. For the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm living under someone else's rules." "To freedom," Ethan said, clinking his glass against mine. "To freedom," I echoed, smiling. The divorce hadn't just ended my marriage. It had opened the door to a new chapter, one where I called the shots. The resentment, the self-doubt, the constant feeling of being trapped. They were all gone, replaced by a quiet confidence I hadn't felt in years. But the biggest change wasn't the apartment or my new hobbies. It was my mindset. I'd always thought of myself as someone who avoided confrontation, someone who kept the peace at all costs. But this experience had shown me that I was stronger than I ever realized. Vanessa had underestimated me. She thought she could bulldoze her way through my life, take everything, and leave me scrambling in the wreckage. But she was wrong. Her arrogance was her downfall, and my quiet resilience was my victory. One day, while scrolling through emails, I saw a message from her. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" I didn't even open it. Whatever she had to say, it didn't matter. My focus was forward, not back. Life didn't change overnight, but little by little, I built something new. The apartment became a haven, a place filled with laughter, warmth, and the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. The friendships I rekindled reminded me of the importance of surrounding myself with people who truly cared. And through it all, I learned to trust myself again. For years, I doubted my instincts, second-guessed every decision, and let someone else's needs overshadow my own. But now, I knew better. I knew what I deserved, and I wasn't willing to settle for anything less. The night everything finally felt complete was quiet and unremarkable in the best way. I was sitting on my new couch, a glass of wine in hand, watching the city lights twinkle outside the window. The apartment was warm and inviting, a true reflection of me. I thought about everything Vanessa had said during that phone call, the arrogance, the condescension, the smug certainty that she'd won. And I couldn't help but smile. She thought she was walking away with everything, but in reality, she left with nothing. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of a life I never knew I could have. One filled with possibility, peace, and the freedom to be exactly who I was meant to be. And for the first time in years, I felt truly, completely free. The clock on the kitchen wall ticks past 8, and I'm still sitting here, staring at the table I set hours ago. It's my 38th birthday, and the apartment feels too big, too quiet. I spent the morning arranging everything just right: clean plates, polished glasses, a centerpiece of white lilies I picked up because they looked hopeful. The bottle of whiskey, my favorite, sits unopened in the middle, its amber glow catching the light from the chandelier. I thought someone would show up. My parents, maybe, or a cousin, or at least Selena. But the doorbell hasn't rung, and the silence is starting to feel like a guest I didn't invite. I lean back in my chair, the leather creaking under me, and try to shake off the weight in my chest. I'm not the type to throw myself pity parties, but this one's hard to ignore. I'm a software engineer, good at fixing problems, breaking things down into logical steps, but I can't debug this. Nobody came. Nobody even called. I glance at my phone again, nothing. No texts, no missed calls, just a blank screen staring back at me like it's disappointed too. I think about calling Selena. She's been distant lately, always rushing off to meetings or weekends away, but she wouldn't forget today. Would she? My thumb hovers over her name, and I hit dial before I can overthink it. The line rings once, twice, then her voice comes through, bright and sharp, like she's mid-laugh. Julian? Oh, hold on. I'm in Europe with your brother. Europe. With Brooks. The words hit like a punch I didn't see coming. I grip the phone tighter, my knuckles whitening, and try to process what she's saying. She's laughing, like it's no big deal, like she didn't just leave me sitting here alone on my birthday. Before I can respond, another voice cuts in, Brooks, smug and smooth as ever. Why bother, man? She's gonna divorce you soon anyway. His words hang there, heavy, like they've been waiting to be said for months. I don't say anything back. I can't. My throat feels tight, and the room seems to shrink around me. Divorce. Is that what this is? Is that why she's been pulling away? Why she's always with him instead of here? I hang up without a word, my hand shaking as I set the phone down. The apartment is quieter now, if that's even possible, and I feel like I'm sinking into the floor. I sit there for a long time, staring at the whiskey bottle, trying to figure out what just happened. My brother, the one who always gets the spotlight, the one who's got more money than sense, is halfway across the world with my wife. And I'm here, surrounded by plates nobody's going to use. I think about calling my parents, but I know they're probably at some gala or golf trip, too busy to check in. They've always been like that. Brooks is the star, and I'm just the guy who's good with computers. I rub my eyes, tired of feeling like this, tired of waiting for people who don't show up. Then I hear it, a soft knock at the door. My heart jumps, just for a second, thinking maybe Selena changed her mind, maybe someone remembered. I cross the room, my socks silent on the hardwood, and open the door. It's Miriam, my old mentor from university, standing there with a bouquet of daisies and a warm smile that feels like a lifeline. Happy birthday, Julian, she says, her voice steady, like she's been planning this all day. I step aside, letting her in, and something in me shifts. She's here. She chose to be here. We sit at the table, and she tells me about her new apartment, her retirement, the way she's learning to bake. I pour us both a glass of whiskey, and the burn feels good, grounding. We talk, and for the first time all night, I'm not thinking about who's not here. I'm just here, with her, and it's enough. Later, when she's laughing at some story about her cat, I pick up my phone. Not to call anyone, not to check for messages, but to take a picture. It's me and Miriam, smiling, the whiskey bottle between us, the lilies in the background. I don't think too hard about it. I just send it to Selena. No caption, no explanation, just the photo. Then I turn my phone off and set it face down on the table. I don't need to hear her response, not tonight. I look at Miriam, who's slicing into a lemon pie she brought, and I feel something I haven't in a long time. Peace. The silence isn't heavy anymore. It's just quiet, like a blank page waiting for something new. I take a sip of whiskey and let the warmth spread through me. This isn't how I thought my birthday would go, but maybe it's better. Maybe this is the start of something I didn't know I needed. I lean forward, listening as Miriam tells another story, and for now, that's all I want. Just this moment, this table, this glass. The rest can wait. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when Selena started to slip away from me, but looking back, I think it was around the time we got married. I'm sitting in my office now, months before that empty birthday, staring at a photo of us from our wedding day. She's radiant in her white dress, her smile wide and bright, and I'm standing next to her, a little stiff in my suit, but happy, really happy. I thought she was everything I could ever want. She was elegant, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone turn their heads. As a marketing executive, she had this gift for talking to people, making them feel important, whether it was at a fancy gala or a coffee shop. I'm not like that. I'm quieter, more comfortable behind a computer screen, building software that makes things work better, like systems for hospitals to save time and lives. But Selena, she could charm anyone, and for a while, I thought she'd chosen me because she saw something in me that others didn't. I was wrong. I set the photo down on my desk, rubbing my temples, trying to make sense of how we got here. After the wedding, things changed, slow at first, then all at once. She stopped asking me how my day went, stopped sitting with me on the couch to watch those old sci-fi movies we both liked. I'd come home from work, my head full of code and deadlines, and she'd be on her phone, texting or scrolling, barely looking up. Just work stuff, she'd say if I asked. But her voice was always sharp, like I was interrupting something more important. I tried to brush it off, told myself she was busy, that her job demanded a lot. But then the weekends started disappearing. She'd pack a bag and say she was visiting friends or going to some networking event, and I'd nod, not wanting to seem clingy. I loved her, and love means trusting, right? But the truth was, I was starting to feel like a stranger in my own apartment. I leaned back in my chair, the hum of my computer filling the quiet. I think about Brooks, my brother, and how he's been around more lately. Not with me, but with her. He's always been the loud one, the guy who throws money around like it's nothing, the one our parents brag about at every family dinner. He's got his real estate deals, his flashy cars, and a way of talking that makes people hang on his words. I'm not jealous of him, not really, but I've always known he gets the attention I never did. Growing up, I was the kid who fixed the family computer, who built apps for fun, but to them, I was just good with tech. Brooks was the star, and I was the shadow. So when Selena started spending time with him, calling it family stuff, I didn't question it at first. I wanted to believe it was innocent, that they were just bonding because she was part of the family now. But there was this one night, maybe 6 months ago, that I can't shake. I came home early from a late coding session, and they were in our living room, laughing over glasses of wine. The air felt thick, like I'd walked into something I wasn't supposed to see. "Oh, Julian, you're back," she said, her voice too bright, and Brooks just smirked, leaning back on the couch like he owned the place. I mumbled something about being tired and went to bed, but I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I felt so small in my own home. After that, it got worse. She'd mentioned Brooks in passing, how he took her to some exclusive restaurant, how he knew all the right people for her career. I'd listen, nodding, trying to be supportive, but each word felt like a brick piling up between us. I started to notice how she'd light up when she talked about him, how her eyes would spark in a way they hadn't for me in months. I'd ask her to stay home sometimes, maybe have dinner together, but she'd wave me off, saying she had plans, and I'd end up eating alone at the kitchen table, the TV on just to fill the silence. I'm not proud of it, but I started checking her phone when she was in the shower, not all the time, just once or twice. The messages weren't blatant, but they were there. Brooke sending her memes, her replying with laughing emojis, plans to meet up for drinks. Nothing I could point to and say, "This is wrong," but enough to make my stomach twist. I never confronted her. I didn't know how. I'm not the guy who yells or makes a scene. I solve problems logically, step by step, but this wasn't a bug I could fix with a few lines of code. I look at the wedding photo again, and it feels like it belongs to someone else's life. I loved her completely, quietly, the way I do everything, but now I'm starting to see I was just background noise to her. She wanted the spotlight, and I couldn't give her that, not like Brooks could. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of it settle. I don't know what's coming, but I know I can't keep living like this, fading into the walls of my own story. I need to find a way to matter again, to myself if no one else. I'm sitting on the couch in my apartment, a week before my birthday, my laptop open but untouched on the coffee table. The screen's gone dark, reflecting my face back at me, and I barely recognize the guy staring back. Tired eyes, a jaw that's been clenched too long. I'm trying to focus on work, some new feature for the hospital software I've been building for years, but my mind keeps drifting to my family, to the way they've always made me feel like I'm not quite enough. It's not a new feeling, but tonight it's sharper, like a splinter I can't ignore. Nobody's reached out about my birthday, not even a text to ask if I'm doing anything special. I keep checking my phone, hoping for something, a message from my mom, maybe, or my dad, but the screen stays empty. It's silly to care this much, I know. I'm 38, not a kid waiting for a party, but the silence feels personal, like they've all decided I'm not worth the effort. I lean back, rubbing my hands over my face, and let my thoughts wander to the past, to all the years I spent trying to fit into a family that never really saw me. Growing up, it was always about Brooks. He was the loud one, the charmer, the kid who'd talk his way out of trouble and get a pat on the back for it. I was the quiet one, the one who'd rather take apart a computer than toss a football. My parents didn't know what to do with me. He's just good with computers, my mom would say, like it was a hobby I'd grow out of, not a skill that could change lives. I didn't mind too much back then. I liked my world of circuits and code, where things made sense if you worked at them long enough. But it stung when they'd skip my science fairs to cheer at Brooks' soccer games, or when they'd brag about his latest business idea while I was in the next room, building software that kept emergency rooms running smoothly. I never said anything. I just kept working, kept proving myself in my own way, thinking maybe one day they'd notice. They didn't. I think about the last family dinner I went to, maybe a year ago. It was at some fancy restaurant Brooks picked, all glass walls and overpriced wine. My parents were there, beaming at him as he talked about his new condo development, throwing around numbers like they were confetti. I sat across from them, picking at my food, waiting for a chance to mention the award my team won for the hospital project. It never came. Every time I opened my mouth, Brooks would jump in with another story, and my parents would laugh or nod, hanging on his every word. Selena was there too, sitting next to me but not really with me, her eyes on him, her laugh a little too loud. I remember feeling like I was watching a play I wasn't cast in. By the end of the night, I'd barely said 10 words, and nobody noticed. I stopped going to those dinners after that. I told myself it was because I was busy, but the truth is, I was tired of being invisible. I stand up now, pacing the living room, my socks scuffing against the rug. The apartment feels too big tonight, like it's swallowing me whole. I think about calling my mom, just to see if she remembers my birthday's coming up, but I can't bring myself to do it. What if she doesn't? What if she brushes it off with some excuse about how busy they are? I've spent so long trying not to care, trying to be the guy who doesn't need their approval, but it's not working anymore. Something inside me feels cracked, like a piece of glass that's still holding together but won't for much longer. I stop by the window, looking out at the city lights blinking in the dark. I wonder what it would be like to have a family that shows up, not just for the big moments but for the small ones too, like a birthday or a random Tuesday when you just need someone to listen. I've never had that. Even when I was a kid, I'd spend holidays in my room, tinkering with gadgets, while Brooks and my parents made plans without me. I told myself it was fine, that I liked being alone, but now I'm not so sure. Alone isn't the same as lonely, and I'm starting to feel the difference. I think about Selena, how she's been pulling away, spending more time with Brooks than with me. I wonder if she's part of this too, if she's decided I'm not worth showing up for either. The thought makes my chest ache, but I push it down, not ready to face it yet. I walk back to the couch and pick up my phone again, scrolling through my contacts. There's nobody I feel like calling, nobody I trust enough to say, I'm hurting, and I don't know why it's hitting me this hard. My thumb hovers over Miriam's name, my old mentor from college, but I don't press it. I haven't talked to her in years, and what would I even say? That my family forgot me? That I'm scared my wife's leaving me for my brother? It sounds pathetic, even in my head. I set the phone down and close my eyes, letting the quiet settle over me. This isn't just neglect anymore. It's something bigger, something that's been building for years. It's abandonment, plain and simple, and I don't know how to fix it. All I know is I can't keep waiting for them to change, for them to see me. I need to do something, anything, to stop feeling like this. I open my eyes and look at the laptop again. Maybe work's not the answer tonight, but it's something I'm good at, something I control. I sit down, wake the screen, and start typing, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of code. It's not much, but it's a start, a way to remind myself I'm still here, even if nobody else thinks so. I'm sitting at my desk 2 weeks before my birthday, the glow of my computer screen the only light in the room. The apartment's quiet, like it's been most nights lately, and I'm scrolling through emails, trying to focus on work but feeling that familiar ache in my chest. Selena's out again. Some work event, she said, but I don't ask anymore. I know she won't tell me the truth, and I'm too tired to chase it. My birthday's coming up, and I keep thinking about how nobody's mentioned it. Not her, not my parents, not even a coworker. I don't want a big party or anything, but the idea of another year passing without anyone noticing stings more than I want to admit. I lean back in my chair, running my hands through my hair, and stare at the ceiling. I need to do something different this time, something that feels like it matters. That's when I think of Miriam, my old mentor from college. She was the one person who always saw me, not just as a coder, but as someone with ideas, someone worth listening to. I haven't talked to her in years, not since she moved away after I graduated, but I heard she's back in the city, retired now. My fingers hover over my phone, and before I can talk myself out of it, I find her number and call. She picks up on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar, like no time's passed at all. "Julian, what a surprise," she says, and just hearing her say my name makes me feel steadier. We talk for a bit, about her new place, about my job, and then I blurted out, "I'm turning 38 soon, and I want to have a small dinner, just a few people. Would you come?" There's a pause, and I hold my breath, worried I've overstepped, but then she says, "I'd love to. Tell me when and where." I hang up feeling lighter, like I've taken a step towards something real. Fast forward to the night of my birthday, and I'm standing in my apartment, the table set with plates I polished myself, the whiskey bottle I picked out weeks ago waiting in the center. The clock's ticking past 7, and nobody's here. Not Selena, not my family. Nobody. I've been trying not to check my phone, but I can't help it. Still no messages, no calls. I called Selena earlier, and she laughed about being in Europe with Brooks, his smug voice cutting in about divorce. I hung up, sent a photo with Miriam later, and turned my phone off. That's done now. I'm trying to shake off the hurt when the doorbell rings, soft but clear. My heart lifts, just for a second, and I cross the room to open it. There's Miriam, standing in the hallway with a bouquet of daisies and a foil-covered dish that smells like lemon and sugar. "Happy birthday," she says, her eyes crinkling with a smile that feels like home. I step aside, letting her in, and the weight I've been carrying all day starts to loosen. She sets the flowers in a vase I didn't even know I had, chatting about how she's been experimenting with baking since she retired. "This is lemon pie," she says, uncovering the dish. "I hope it's edible." I laugh, the sound surprising me, and grab 2 glasses for the whiskey. We sit at the table, and she raises her glass, looking right at me. "To you, Julian," she says. "To the man who builds things that matter, even when nobody's watching." Her words hit me hard, not because they're fancy, but because they're true. She sees me, the way I've always wanted to be seen, and for the first time tonight, I feel like I'm enough. We talk about everything, her teaching days, my latest project, the way the city's changed since we met. She tells me about a student she had who reminded her of me, someone quiet but fierce when it came to solving problems. I tell her about the hospital software, how it saved lives in ways I never expected. It's not bragging. It's just easy with her, like I don't have to prove anything. The whiskey burns smooth, and the pie's better than she gave herself credit for, tart and sweet all at once. Hours pass, and I don't even notice. I'm not thinking about Selena or Brooks or my parents. I'm just here, in this moment, with someone who showed up when nobody else did. Later, when we're clearing the plates, I pick up my phone without thinking and snap a photo of us. My arm's around her shoulder, and we're both smiling, the whiskey bottle and flowers in the background. I don't plan to send it. It's just for me, a reminder of this night. But then I think of Selena, of her laugh when she said she was with Brooks, and I open my messages. I send the photo, no words, just the image. It's not about making her jealous or getting even. It's about closing a door, about saying I don't need her to make this day matter. I turn my phone off again and set it down, feeling a calm I haven't in months. Miriam's telling a story about her cat knocking over a plant, and I laugh, really laugh, for the first time all day. The apartment doesn't feel empty anymore. It's just us, this table, this night, and it's more than I thought I'd have. I pour another splash of whiskey and settle back in my chair, letting her voice fill the room. This isn't the birthday I planned, but it's the one I needed, and for now, that's enough. It's the morning after my birthday, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table, the remnants of last night still scattered around me, empty whiskey glasses, a half-eaten lemon pie, the daisies Miriam brought drooping slightly in their vase. The apartment's quiet again, but it's not the heavy kind of quiet from yesterday. It's softer, like the world's giving me a moment to breathe. My phone's been off since I sent that photo of me and Miriam to Selena, and I'm not ready to turn it back on. I know what's waiting for me, missed calls, texts, maybe even voicemails, and I don't have the energy to deal with them yet. I sip my coffee, the mug warm against my palms, and think about last night, how Miriam stayed until almost midnight, how we talked about things I haven't said out loud in years. It wasn't just catching up. It was like she was reminding me who I am, the guy who used to dream big before I got caught up in trying to please everyone else. I'm still thinking about her toast, about building things that matter, when my phone buzzes on the counter. I forgot I turned it on for a second to check my work email. I pick it up, and the screen lights up with notifications, 10 missed calls from Selena, then 20, now 30 as another one rolls in. I let it go to voicemail, my thumb hovering over the screen as texts pop up one after another. Who is she? The first one reads. Then, answer me. Then, Julian, this isn't funny. I stare at the words, and a faint smile tugs at my lips, not because I'm happy, but because it's so predictable. She's not upset that she wasn't here, not sorry for leaving me alone on my birthday. She's just mad about the photo, about the idea that I might not be sitting here waiting for her. I set the phone down, screen up, and watch it buzz again. Another call, another text, but I don't pick it up. Instead, I think about Miriam, about how she showed up when nobody else did, how she didn't need me to be anything other than myself. We talked about dreams last night, about the ones I used to have before I got married, before I started measuring my life by other people's expectations. I told her how I wanted to build something bigger than software, something that could change how people connect, how they heal. She listened, really listened, and said, "You're already doing that, Julian. You just stopped believing it." Her words stuck with me, like a key turning in a lock I didn't know was there. I get up and walk to the window, looking out at the city waking up. Cars crawling through the streets, lights flickering off in the buildings across from mine. I've been surviving here, not living. I've been going through the motions, working long hours, coming home to an empty apartment, hoping Selena would notice me, hoping my family would remember I exist. But last night, sitting across from Miriam, I realized I don't want to keep doing that. I don't want to be the guy who waits for people who don't care if I'm breathing. My phone buzzes again, and I glance at it, another voicemail, probably Selena yelling or crying, or both. I don't listen. I turn it off completely this time, shoving it into a drawer like I'm locking away a distraction. I don't need to hear her voice to know what's real. She's been gone for months, maybe longer, and I've been too stubborn to admit it. I think about Brooks, too, about his smug comment on the phone yesterday, about divorce like it's a done deal. Maybe it is. Maybe that's what this has been leading to all along. But if it's over, it's not going to be on their terms. It's going to be on mine. I walk back to the table, picking up the whiskey glasses and carrying them to the sink. The routine of washing them, drying them, putting them away feels grounding, like I'm clearing space for something new. I think about Miriam again, about how she talked about integrity last night, about how love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, a commitment to show up even when it's hard. I haven't had that. Not from Selena, not from my family. But I had it last night, and that small, warm moment with someone who didn't owe me anything but chose to be there anyway. I dry my hands and sit back down, staring at the pie. I cut myself a slice, even though it's barely 9 in the morning, and take a bite. The tartness wakes me up, and I smile, thinking of Miriam's laugh when she warned me it might not be perfect. It's better than perfect, it's honest. I eat slowly, letting my thoughts settle. I don't know what comes next, not exactly. But I know I can't stay here, in this apartment, in this life, waiting for things to change. I need to move, to build, to find people who see me the way Miriam does. I think about my work, about the software I've poured years into, about the lives it's touched without me ever taking credit. Maybe it's time to step out of the shadows, to stop hiding behind my code and start owning what I've done. I finish the pie and lean back, feeling a little steadier. The day's stretching out in front of me, and for the first time in a long time, it doesn't feel like something to survive. It feels like a chance to start over, to figure out what I want, not what I'm supposed to want. I don't need Selena's calls or Brooks' taunts or my parents' approval. I need me, my ideas, my strength, my choices. I stand up, grab my laptop, and open a new document. It's not code this time, just a blank page. I don't know what I'll write yet, but it feels right, like the first step towards something I can't name but know I need. The phone stays in the drawer, and the world stays out there. For now, it's just me, and that's enough. It's been a week since my birthday, and I'm standing in the middle of my apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes I've been packing all morning. The place looks smaller somehow, stripped of the things that made it mine: books, framed photos, the coffee mug I always used. I'm moving out, not because I can't afford to stay, but because I can't keep living in a space that feels like a museum of a life I don't want anymore. Celine is still in Europe, hasn't been home since before my birthday, and I'm not waiting for her to come back. I'm done waiting for anyone. I tape up a box of clothes, my hands moving on autopilot, and think about the steps I've taken over the past few days. It started the morning after my birthday, when I turned my phone off and decided I needed to take control. I sat at my desk, made a list of what I needed to do, and got to work. First, I backed up all my essential tech projects, years of code, designs, everything I've built for the hospital software and beyond. It's all safe now, stored on a secure drive I keep in a lockbox. I don't know why it felt so urgent, but something told me to protect what's mine. Next, I went online and found a P.O. box in my name, somewhere nobody else knows about. I set up mail forwarding, so anything important, bills, work stuff, goes there instead of here. It's a small thing, but it feels like a clean break, like I'm cutting ties with this address, this life. The biggest step came yesterday, when I signed a lease on a new place in another city. It's a loft, old and rough around the edges, with exposed brick walls and a view of a river that glints in the mornings. I found it online, called the landlord, and drove out to see it the same day. Standing in that empty space, I could breathe easier, like the air was clearer there. It's not fancy, not like the sleek apartment I'm leaving behind, but it's mine. No memories of Selena, no echoes of Brooks or my parents. Just a blank slate. I grab another box from the stack in the corner and start packing my books, wrapping them carefully in bubble wrap. Each one feels like a piece of me: sci-fi novels I read in college, technical manuals I studied to get better at my job, a poetry collection Miriam gave me years ago. I pause, holding that last one, and smile, thinking of her. She texted me yesterday, just to check in, and I told her I was moving. "Good for you," she wrote back. "Build something new. That's what I'm trying to do, even if I'm not sure what it looks like yet." My phone's on the counter, still mostly off. I only turn it on for work or to call people I trust. Celine has stopped blowing it up with texts, but I know she'll see the divorce papers soon. That's the other thing I did this week. I called Ira Delgado, a friend from college who's now a lawyer. We met for coffee a few days ago, and I told him everything: Selena's trips with Brooks, the way she's been pulling away, the birthday call where he talked about divorce like it was his idea. Ira listened, didn't judge, just nodded and said, "You want out? I'll make it clean." I told him I didn't want to fight, just a fair split, and he said he'd draw up the papers. They're ready now, sitting in an envelope on my desk, addressed to Selena at her office since I don't know where she's staying. I wrote a note to go with them, nothing angry or dramatic, just one line: "You left long before I did." It's true, and saying it, even on paper, feels like letting go of something heavy. I carry a box to the door, stacking it with the others for the movers I hired. The logistics are simple. Most of my furniture's staying, since the new place is furnished, and I don't want anything that reminds me of here. I'm keeping my tech gear, my books, my clothes, and a few small things, like the whiskey glasses from my birthday. Everything else can go. I glance around, making sure I haven't missed anything, and spot a photo frame on a shelf, one of me and Selena at a beach last year. I pick it up, studying her smile, and wonder when it stopped being real. I don't feel sad, not exactly, just distant, like I'm looking at someone else's life. I set it down, leaving it for her to find, or not. It doesn't matter anymore. I head to the kitchen, grab a glass of water, and lean against the counter, thinking about what's next. The new city's a few hours away, far enough to feel like a fresh start, but close enough for work if I need to come back. I've got a meeting with my team tomorrow, and I'll tell them I'm working remotely for a while. They won't care, my code's solid, and I've always delivered. But part of me wonders if I'm ready to step up in other ways, to stop hiding behind my work and start owning it. I shake my head, pushing the thought aside for now. One step at a time. I walk back to my desk, pick up the envelope with the divorce papers, and slip it into my bag. I'll drop it off at a courier service later, make sure it gets to her office before she's back from Europe. I don't know how she'll react. Maybe she'll call, maybe she'll show up, but I'm not scared of it anymore. I'm not running away. I'm walking towards something better, something I choose. I grab my keys, take one last look at the apartment, and step outside, locking the door behind me. The hallway's quiet, the air cool against my skin. I feel lighter, like I've shed a layer of something I didn't need. The elevator dings, and I step in, ready to leave this place behind. Whatever comes next, I'm not looking back. I've been in my new city for a week now, and I'm standing in the loft I rented, the morning sun spilling through the tall windows and painting the brick walls gold. The place is still sparse. Just a bed, a desk, my tech gear, and a few boxes I haven't unpacked, but it feels right, like I can breathe here. I'm sipping coffee from a chipped mug I found in a thrift store, staring out at the river glinting below, and thinking about how different this feels from the life I left behind. The divorce papers are on their way to Selena, my old apartment's empty, and for the first time in years, I'm not waiting for anyone else's approval. But it's not just the move that's got me feeling this way, it's what I've started to reclaim, starting with my work. Most people don't know I'm the guy behind MediVault, a data platform that's changed how hospitals share information. It's worth over $80 million now, but I never talked about it, never needed to. I built it quietly, let others take the spotlight while I focused on making it better. That was fine when I thought I had a family, a wife, people who'd see me for more than my code. But now, with nobody showing up for me, I'm starting to see power in what I've created, not for bragging, but for standing on my own. I set my mug down and walked to my desk, where my laptop's open to an email from an old colleague, Sarah, who runs a tech conference. She's asking me to speak next month, says people are buzzing about MediVault's latest updates. I haven't done much public stuff before. Brooks was always the one charming crowds, but I type a quick reply, saying I'm in. It's a small step, but it feels like claiming something I've ignored too long. I lean back in my chair, thinking about how I got here. A few days ago, I called a couple of industry contacts, people I've worked with over the years. I didn't say much, just checked in, asked about their projects, mentioned I was stepping back into MediVault's leadership. Word spread fast. By yesterday, I had messages from investors, developers, even a reporter wanting to know the story behind the silent architect. I didn't respond to most of them. I'm not ready for that yet, but it's strange, seeing how people react when they realize I'm the one who built something they rely on. I always thought staying quiet was enough, that the work would speak for itself. Maybe it did, but now I'm starting to think I need to speak for it too. I get up and pace the loft, my boots echoing on the wood floor. There's a memory nagging at me, something from a year ago when Brooks tried to get involved with MediVault. He called it a gold mine, wanted to push for a quick sale, take a cut for himself. I shut him down, told him it wasn't about money, it was about saving lives. He laughed, said I was naive, that nobody cared about nerd stuff unless it came with a big check. I ignored him then, but now I wonder if he's been waiting for a chance to take what I built. He's always wanted the glory without the grind, and I've let him think he could outshine me because I didn't care about the spotlight. Not anymore. I sit back down and open my laptop again, pulling up MediVault's internal files. I've been out of the CEO role for a while, letting a board handle the big decisions while I focused on coding. But yesterday, I called a meeting with the team, told them I'm stepping back in. Nobody argued. Most of them know I'm the reason the platform works as well as it does. We talked about new features, ways to make it faster, more secure, things I've been sketching out in my head for months. It felt good, like slipping into a jacket that fits just right. I'm not doing it for fame or money, though I won't lie. Knowing it's mine, knowing I built something nobody can take away, feels like armor against everything I've lost. My phone buzzes on the desk, and I glance at it. It's Miriam, texting to ask how I'm settling in. I smile, typing a quick reply about the view and the coffee. She's been checking in every couple of days, not pushing, just letting me know she's there. It's strange, having someone care without expecting anything back. I tell her I'm good, that I'm figuring things out, and she sends a thumbs up emoji that makes me laugh. I set the phone down and look out the window again. The city's waking up, people walking along the river, a dog chasing a ball, life moving forward. I think about the people who used to laugh at me, not just Brooks but colleagues, even some friends who thought I was just a coder, nothing special. They're reaching out now, leaving voicemails, sending emails, acting like we've been close all along. I don't answer most of them. I don't need their validation. I needed it from my family, from Selena, but they didn't give it. And I'm done asking. What I need now is to keep building, not just software, but a life that feels like mine. I close my laptop and grab my jacket, deciding to take a walk. The air outside is crisp, the kind that wakes you up, and I head toward the river, hands in my pockets. I pass a cafe, a bookstore, a guy playing guitar on a bench, and it hits me how much I like it here. Nobody knows me. Not as the guy who built Metavault. Not as Brooks' brother or Selena's husband. Just as me. I stop by the water, watching it ripple under the sun, and feel something settle in my chest. This is my city now, my work, my life. I've spent too long letting other people write my story, but I'm taking the pen back. Whatever comes next, meetings, speeches, maybe even facing Selena when she gets those papers, it's on my terms. I turn back toward the loft, ready to unpack another box, maybe call Sarah about that conference. The world's starting to see what I've built, but more than that, I'm starting to see it myself. I'm sitting in my loft, the late afternoon light filtering through the windows, casting long shadows across the brick walls. It's been a month since I moved here, and the place is starting to feel like home, books on shelves, a rug I picked up at a market, my tech gear humming quietly on the desk. I'm working on a new update for Metavault, my fingers tapping out code, but my mind's half on the email I got this morning from Ira, my lawyer friend. He says Selena's back from Europe, and she's furious. The divorce papers hit her office yesterday, and she's already called him, demanding a meeting. I told Ira to handle it, to keep it clean, but I know she won't let this go quietly. I lean back in my chair, rubbing my eyes, and think about what's coming. I'm not scared, not exactly, just ready to close this chapter for good. My phone's been quiet since I changed my number, giving the new one only to people I trust, like Ira and Miriam. Selena doesn't have it, and neither does Brooks, which feels like a small victory. I heard from a mutual friend that she showed up at the old apartment last week, found it cleared out, my keys on the counter, and her access to our joint accounts cut off. I didn't freeze them out of spite. I just moved my money to a new bank, left her what was fair, and made sure she couldn't touch what's mine anymore. Ira says she's claiming I abandoned her, that she's entitled to half of everything, but he's confident she won't get far. I stand up, stretching my arms, and walk to the window, looking out at the river. I think about the prenup we signed before the wedding, something Ira insisted on back when I was too in love to think I'd need it. Selena laughed it off at the time, said it was just paperwork, but I'm glad I listened to him. It's clear now, she didn't expect me to walk away, didn't expect me to have a spine. I smile faintly, shaking my head. I've spent so long being the quiet one, the guy who fixes things without making a fuss, that she forgot I'm not a doormat. I head to the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water, and think about Brooks, too. He's been calling Ira's office, leaving messages, probably thinking he can bully his way into this. I haven't spoken to him since that birthday call, when he taunted me about divorce, and I don't plan to. But I did something last week I'm not entirely proud of, though it felt right. I've been digging through old Metavault files, checking for loose ends, and found emails from Brooks to one of our board members, pushing for insider deals that looked shady. I didn't hesitate. I sent them anonymously to a contact at the SEC. I don't know what'll come of it, but if he's been playing dirty, he'll face the consequences without me having to say a word. I set the glass down and walk back to my desk, pulling up Ira's latest email. He's prepped for the property hearing next week, says he's got everything we need. Bank statements, the prenup, even security footage from our old apartment building. I didn't know about that last part until he mentioned it. Apparently, the cameras caught Selena leaving with Brooks for those weekend trips she always talked about, over and over, long before my birthday. It's not just proof of her being gone. It's proof she was never really there. I don't feel vindictive, just tired, like I'm finally seeing the truth I ignored for too long. I close the laptop and lean back, thinking about what Iris said about the hearing. Selena's going to push for spousal support, maybe even a chunk of Metavault, but Ira's ready to shut it down. He says the prenup's ironclad, and the footage will make her claims look desperate. I told him I don't want to drag this out. I just want it done. If she walks away with nothing but her clothes and her pride, that's fine by me. She made her choices, and I'm not paying for them anymore. My mind drifts to Brooks again, to the rumors I've heard through industry friends. His real estate deals are starting to crumble, and word is the SEC's sniffing around. I don't know if it's because of what I sent, but part of me hopes it is. He spent years acting like he's untouchable, like I'm just his nerdy brother who'll never catch up. But I built something real, something that matters, and he can't take that away, no matter how loud he talks. I get up and pace the loft, feeling the wood floor creak under my boots. The hearing's going to be tough, not because I'm worried about losing, but because it'll mean facing her, maybe him too. I don't want to see their faces, don't want to hear their excuses. I just want to move on, to keep building this life I'm starting to like. I think about the conference I'm speaking at soon, about the new MetaVault features my team's rolling out. Those things matter, not because they're loud or flashy, but because they're mine, and they're good. I stop by the window again, watching the city settle into dusk. I feel a calm I didn't expect, like I'm standing on solid ground for the first time in years. Selena can rage, Brooks can squirm, but they don't get to write my story anymore. I'm not the guy who sits quietly while they take what they want. I'm the guy who built an empire nobody saw coming, and I'm not giving it up. I head back to my desk, grab my phone, and text Ira. Do what you need to. I'm ready. Then I set it down and look around the loft, my space, my life. Whatever happens at that hearing, I'm walking out free, and they can't touch that. I open my laptop again, not to work, but to pull up a photo from my birthday, the one with Miriam and me smiling. I don't need to prove anything to Selena or Brooks. I just need to keep being the guy in that picture, the one who's starting to believe in himself again. The sun's almost gone now, and the river's a dark ribbon below. I close the laptop and decide to call it a day. Tomorrow's another chance to build, and I'm not wasting it. I'm standing in my loft, the scent of fresh bread and roasted vegetables filling the air as I adjust the candles on the table. It's been months since the divorce papers were signed, since the hearing where Selena walked away with nothing but her designer bags and a scowl. Tonight, I'm hosting a small dinner, not for my birthday or any big occasion, just because I want to. The space feels alive, warm light bouncing off the brick walls, a soft hum of music from a guitarist friend I met at a local cafe, laughter already starting to spill from the few guests who've arrived. I've got a bottle of whiskey open, the same kind I shared with Miriam on my birthday, and a spread of food I helped make, though I'll admit the bread's from a bakery down the street. I'm not a chef, but I'm learning, and it feels good to try something new. I glance around, taking it all in. Miriam's by the window, chatting with Ira, my lawyer friend, who's holding a glass of wine and grinning like he's never seen me this relaxed. There's a couple of local musicians setting up in the corner, tuning their guitars, and a neighbor I've gotten to know, a painter who's always got a story to tell. It's a small group, maybe 10 people, but they're here because they want to be, because they see me, not some version of me they wish I was. I adjust a plate on the table, feeling a nervous energy I haven't had in a while, not bad nerves, just the kind that comes when you're doing something that matters. I think about the past year, how it started with that empty birthday, nobody showing up except Miriam. I was so lost then, sitting in an apartment that felt like a cage, waiting for Selena, for my family, for anyone to care. I don't feel that way anymore. The hearing was the turning point, when Ira laid out the prenup and the footage of Selena leaving with Brooks, week after week. She tried to argue, said I'd pushed her away, but the judge didn't buy it. She left with what she brought into the marriage, her clothes, her jewelry, her ambition, and I walked out feeling lighter than I had in years. Brooks didn't show up to the hearing, probably too busy dodging the SEC investigation I tipped off. Last I heard, his deals were falling apart, and he's laying low, but I don't care enough to keep tabs. That's their world now, not mine. I pour myself a splash of whiskey and take a sip, the burn familiar and comforting. The guitarist starts playing a slow melody, and I catch Miriam's eye across the room. She smiles, raises her glass, and I nod back, grateful for her. She's been a constant these past months, not just a mentor but a friend, someone who reminds me it's okay to be quiet, to build things slowly, as long as they're real. I think about the letter I wrote a while back, one I never sent to my family. I pull it out sometimes, read it to myself, but tonight, I want to share it. Not because I need to prove anything, but because saying it out loud feels like letting go of the last piece of that old hurt. I clear my throat, stepping to the center of the room, and the chatter quiets down. Hey, everyone, I say, my voice steadier than I expect. I just want to say thanks for being here. This year's been a lot, and having you all in my life means more than I can put into words. I wrote something a while ago, something I needed to get out, and I'd like to read it if that's okay. Nobody objects, just nods or smiles, and I pull the folded paper from my pocket. My hands shake a little, but I unfold it and start reading. To my family, I never needed you to be proud. I only needed you to show up. You didn't. And now, neither will I. The words hang in the air, simple but heavy, and I look up to see Miriam wiping her eyes, Ira giving me a small nod. Nobody claps or makes a big deal, and I'm glad. They just listen, and that's enough. I fold the paper and slip it back into my pocket, feeling like I've set down something I've carried too long. Anyway, I say, breaking the silence, let's eat. That gets a laugh, and the room comes back to life, people grabbing plates, passing dishes, talking over each other. I sit at the table, next to Miriam, and listen to the painter tell a story about a mural he's working on. The food's good, better than I expected, and the whiskey flows, but it's the warmth in the room that fills me up. I think about Medavolt, how I spoke at that conference last month and felt, for the first time, like I belonged in the spotlight. People asked questions, wanted my thoughts, and I realized I had something worth saying. I'm not Brooks, all charm and flash, but I'm me, and that's starting to feel like enough. The night stretches on, and I'm laughing at something Ira says about his latest case when I catch my reflection in the window. I don't look like the guy from a year ago, the one who sat alone waiting for a call that never came. I look like someone who's building something, not just code but a life, with people who choose to be here. The musicians play a new song, something upbeat, and a few people start dancing, clumsy but happy. I stay at the table, watching, and Miriam leans over, her voice low. "You did good tonight, Julian." I smile, not sure what to say, but I know she's right. This is good, messy, real, mine. I raise my glass, and we toast to new beginnings, to nights like this, to people who show up. The music keeps going, the candles burn low, and I let myself sink into it, no regrets, no looking back, just this moment and the promise of more. I wake up to the sound of birds outside my loft window, a soft chirping that's become my morning routine in this new city. It's my 39th birthday, and I'm lying in bed, the sheets cool against my skin, watching the first light creep across the brick walls. There's no weight in my chest today, no anxious checking of my phone for messages that won't come. I feel steady, like I've finally landed somewhere I belong. I roll over, grab my phone from the nightstand, and see a few texts already, Miriam wishing me a happy birthday, Ira joking about getting old, a couple of colleagues saying they're looking forward to the next Medavolt update. I smile, typing quick replies, and get up to start the day. The loft smells like coffee before I even reach the kitchen, thanks to the machine I set up last night. I pour a cup, the mug warm in my hands, and lean against the counter, thinking about how different this birthday feels from last year. Back then, I was sitting in an apartment that felt like a tomb, waiting for Selena, for my family, for anyone to show up. Nobody did, except Miriam, and that night changed everything. Now, I'm here, in a life I built from scratch, and it's better than I could have imagined. I take my coffee to the window, looking out at the river sparkling under the morning sun. Miriam moved into a cottage a few blocks away a couple of months ago, and we've settled into a rhythm, weekly dinners, walks by the river, conversations that don't need to be anything more than what they are. She's not family, not in the way most people mean it, but she's home, the kind of friend who shows up without being asked. I think about inviting her over later, maybe cracking open that whiskey we both like, but for now, I'm content to stand here, letting the day unfold. My phone buzzes again, and I check it, a message from a teacher at the middle school where I sponsor a coding club. She sent a photo, and when I open it, my breath catches. It's a group of kids, maybe 12 or 13 years old, standing in a classroom, holding a banner that reads, "Thank you, Mr. Ross. You made us believe we could build something, too." They're grinning, some holding laptops, others waving at the camera, and I can't stop smiling. I started the club on a whim, thinking I could share what I know, but it's become more than that. Those kids remind me of myself at their age, tinkering with computers, dreaming of things nobody else understood. I text the teacher back, thanking her, and save the photo to my phone. It's the best gift I could have gotten, better than any party or bottle of wine. I set the phone down and head to my desk, where my laptop's waiting. I don't have any big plans today. No meetings, no deadlines, just a few ideas for Medavolt I want to sketch out. The platform's growing faster than I expected, with hospitals across the country signing on, and I'm starting to mentor a few young developers who reached out after my conference talk. I don't feel like the silent architect anymore. I'm just me, doing what I love, and it's enough. I think about Selena for a moment, but it's fleeting, like a shadow passing over the sun. I haven't heard from her since the hearing, and I don't expect to. Last I heard, she moved to another city, chasing some new marketing job. Brooks is out of the picture too, tangled up in legal trouble after the SEC dug into his deals. My parents sent a card a while back, not for my birthday, just a generic note about keeping in touch. I didn't reply. I don't hate them, but I don't need them either. I've got people who show up, and that's more than I ever had before. I sip my coffee, letting the warmth spread through me, and think about the kids in that photo again. I want to do more for them, maybe expand the club, get them better equipment. I jot a note to call the school next week, see what they need. It's not about being a hero. It's about giving them what I wish I'd had, someone who believed in me before I believed in myself. The morning stretches on, and I decide to take a walk before it gets too warm. I grab my jacket, step outside, and let the city wrap around me, bikes whizzing by, a street vendor selling fruit, the hum of life that's become familiar. I pass the cafe where I met the guitarist who played at my dinner party, wave at the bookstore owner sweeping her steps. This place knows me now, not as anyone special, just as the guy who lives by the river, who stops for coffee and says hello. I end up at the water's edge, sitting on a bench, watching the current move slow and steady. I think about Miriam's toast on my last birthday, about building things that matter. I'm doing that, not just with code, but with this life, friends, a community, a purpose that feels bigger than me. I don't need apologies from Selena or my family. Don't need their approval or their regrets. I've got what I need right here, in this moment, in the choices I make every day. My phone buzzes one more time, and it's Miriam again, asking if I'm free for dinner. I text back, telling her to come over, that I'll grab that whiskey and maybe some of that pie she's so good at making. She replies with a smiley face, and I laugh, pocketing the phone. I stand up, stretch, and start walking back to the loft, the sun climbing higher, the birds still singing. The day's mine, and so is the life I'm living, no calls to wait for, no bottles to uncork alone. I'm home, and as I head up the stairs to my door, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.